Will you marry me?
But you don't even know me.
He planned the perfect proposal, with a diamond ring and his friends waiting to celebrate. But instead of saying yes, his girlfriend was in Paris with another man. Heartbroken, he wandered into a garden, only to find a woman crying, abandoned after 6 years of love. In that moment, he went down on one knee and proposed to a stranger. Betta stood in front of the tall black gate, her heart beating with excitement. She had just finished work early and thought it would be a sweet surprise to visit her man. For 6 years they had shared laughter, dreams, and struggles. She always imagined that one day soon he would go down on one knee and ask her to be his wife. With a small smile on her lips, she pushed the gate open and walked toward the house. The lights inside were on and she could hear soft music playing. She adjusted her hair, took a deep breath, and knocked lightly before letting herself in. But the moment she stepped into the living room, her world crashed. There, sitting comfortably on the couch, was another woman. She was dressed elegantly, her high heels resting on the carpet, her laughter filling the room as she sipped from a wine glass. And beside him, looking more relaxed than Betta had ever seen him, was her man. For a moment, Betta froze, unable to process what her eyes were seeing. "Babe, what's going on here?" Her voice trembled as she asked. The man stood up quickly, his face a mixture of guilt and coldness. He scratched the back of his head, avoiding her eyes. The other woman gave a smug smile, as if she had already won. "Beta," he finally said, his voice low, "I think it's time you know. This is Tasha. I'm with her now." Those words hit Betta like a sharp blade. With her? After 6 years? After everything we've built together? Betta's voice cracked as tears welled in her eyes. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," he said, still refusing to meet her gaze. "I've made my choice." The room spun around Betta. 6 years of her life, her love, her trust, her sacrifices, wiped away in an instant. She looked at the other woman who sat there unbothered, and then back at the man she once thought was her forever. Her chest tightened as though the air had been snatched from her lungs. Without another word, Betta turned and ran out of the house, her tears streaming freely down her face. She could hear him calling faintly behind her, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Her legs carried her away, even though her heart felt like it had shattered into 1,000 pieces. Out on the street, the night air was cool, but it did nothing to calm her burning chest. Betta cried helplessly as she walked, not caring who saw her. Memories of their years together flashed through her mind. The long walks, the shared meals, the times he promised her forever. How could forever end like this? She wandered aimlessly, blinded by tears, her steps dragging her toward a familiar place. She didn't plan it, but her heart knew where to go. Soon she found herself standing at the entrance of the garden where they had once spent countless evenings together. The garden where they had talked about dreams, whispered about children's names, and promised to never let go of each other. Betta stumbled toward a bench and sat down. The sight of the flowers, the sound of the rustling trees, the quiet of the night, it all broke her even more. She buried her face in her hands and cried, her body shaking with the weight of her heartbreak. She cried for the love she lost. She cried for the years she would never get back. She cried for the future she thought she had, now gone forever.
Betta sat in the garden, her eyes swollen from crying. She tried to hold her tears back, but every time she thought about what had just happened, the pain returned even stronger. 6 years! 6 long years! How could he let her go so easily? Her mind drifted back to the very beginning. It was a rainy afternoon when she first met him. Betta had been struggling with her umbrella against the wind when he offered to share his. He had a kind smile, the type that made her feel safe instantly. That day, they walked together until the rain stopped, and by the time they parted ways, Betta already felt a spark. He was charming, full of dreams, and ambitious. He spoke about building a future, about creating wealth, and living a life they could both be proud of. Betta had admired that fire in him. She believed in him, and she believed in them. In the early years, things were not easy. They didn't have much. Sometimes they struggled to pay rent. Other times they had to share just one meal between them. But through it all, they held on to each other. They laughed through the struggles, encouraged each other, and promised that the future would be better. Betta remembered the nights they would stay up late, talking about their dreams. He would say, "One day, we'll live in a big house, travel the world, and give our kids the best life." She would smile and reply, "As long as we're together, I'm happy." She supported him in every way she could. When he started his small business, she was there, helping him package goods, staying up late to balance the accounts. She cheered him on when he felt like giving up, reminding him that greatness takes time. And slowly, things began to change. His business grew, his clothes became finer, and his pockets deeper. They could now eat at good restaurants, take weekend trips, and live more comfortably. Betta was proud of him. She believed all their sacrifices were finally paying off. But with time, their relationship began to feel different. He became busier, more distant. The phone calls that used to last hours became short and rushed. The romantic surprises stopped coming. Betta noticed, but she told herself it was only temporary. She believed he was just going through a phase and that their love was still strong enough to last. After all, hadn't they promised each other forever? Her friends often asked why he hadn't proposed yet. 6 years was a long time, and many of her friends were already married with children. But Betta always defended him. "He's just waiting for the right time," she would say with a hopeful smile. Deep down, she held on to the belief that any day now he would surprise her with a ring. Now, sitting in the garden, she realized how blind she had been. All the signs had been there, but she ignored them because she loved him too much. She gave him her heart, her loyalty, her years, only for him to throw it away for someone else. The tears came again, hot and heavy. She hugged herself tightly, as though trying to hold her broken pieces together. "Why wasn't I enough?" she whispered into the night. "Why did he choose her over me?" The stars twinkled above, silent witnesses to her pain. The garden, once filled with laughter and sweet memories, now felt like a cruel reminder of promises that would never be fulfilled. As she sat there, broken and lost, Betta thought her life had ended. She thought she would never feel happiness again. But what she didn't know was that her story was only beginning. Somewhere else in the garden, another heart was breaking too. And soon, fate would bring them together in a way neither of them could have ever imagined.
The night was still, the garden quiet except for the sound of crickets and the soft rustling of leaves. Betta sat on the wooden bench, her face buried in her hands, her tears soaking her palms. Every sob carried the weight of 6 years of love that had just crumbled. She had chosen this garden without even thinking. Her heart led her here. This was where she and her man used to come after long days. Sometimes they would sit and talk for hours. Other times they would simply watch the sunset together. It was their place of peace, their little escape from the world. But tonight the garden felt different. Empty, cold, cruel. Betta cried harder, her shoulders shaking as she whispered prayers under her breath. She begged God for strength, for healing, for answers. Why me? Why now? Haven't I loved enough? Unaware of her presence, just a short distance away, a different story was unfolding. A small gathering of young men in sharp suits had taken over a corner of the garden. Laughter, clinking glasses, and hushed conversations filled the air. At the center of the group was Melvin, tall, handsome, and confident. He was the kind of man who carried wealth with grace, not arrogance. Melvin was not just any man. He was one of the youngest CEOs in the city, admired by many for his intelligence and generosity. Tonight was supposed to be one of the biggest nights of his life. He had planned everything perfectly. After 2 years with his girlfriend, Sandra, he had decided it was time to take their relationship to the next level. He had gathered his closest friends, arranged a quiet celebration, and even chosen the very spot where he would go down on one knee. His heart was full of love, though his friends often teased him. They said Sandra didn't take him seriously. They said she was only with him because of his success. Melvin always brushed those comments aside. Love made him blind to her flaws. He believed that with time, she would see how deeply he cared. Tonight, he thought, would change everything. Tonight, he would propose, and Sandra would finally know he was hers forever. But as the minutes ticked by, Sandra didn't show up. The agreed time came and went. Melvin tried to stay calm, but his heart began to pound with worry. He pulled out his phone and called her. The ring went through. Then she answered, her voice distant and careless. "Melvin, I can't make it tonight." "Can't make it?" Melvin asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Where are you? This is important." There was a pause, then laughter in the background. Sandra sighed. "I'm in Paris. I needed a little getaway. With a friend." His heart sank. He didn't need to ask who the friend was. He already knew. Sandra had always had a wandering heart, chasing after men richer and more powerful than him. He ignored it for 2 years, convincing himself that her mistakes didn't matter because his love was strong enough. But hearing her admit it, hearing her choose someone else so easily, it broke him. "Paris?" he repeated softly, as if saying the word out loud might make it less real. "Yes, Melvin, I'll call you when I get back." And just like that, she hung up. The phone slipped from his hand. His friends noticed his change in mood and rushed to him, but Melvin waved them off. He couldn't face them, not now. Not with the ring still heavy in his pocket and his dream crumbling in front of him. Needing air, needing space, Melvin walked away from the laughter and chatter, his steps heavy as he wandered through the garden. And then he saw her. A young woman, sitting alone on a bench, her face buried in her hands, her body trembling as she cried. Even through the dim light, he could see her beauty, though it was hidden under the pain she carried. Something stirred in Melvin's chest. He didn't know her story, but he knew heartbreak when he saw it. Her tears mirrored his own, and in that moment, it felt as though fate had led him straight to her. Slowly, he walked towards her. Betta, lost in her grief, didn't notice him at first, but soon she felt a presence near her and lifted her head. Her tear-stained eyes met his, and for a brief second, the world seemed to pause. 2 broken hearts, sitting in the same garden, both abandoned by the ones they loved. Melvin stood a few steps away from the crying woman, unsure of what to say. His heart was raw, still bleeding from Sandra's betrayal. But something about the way this stranger cried drew him in. It was as if her pain was echoing his own. He cleared his throat gently, not wanting to startle her,
Are you okay? Betta looked up, her cheeks wet, her eyes swollen. For a moment she stared at him blankly, as if she couldn't even process the question. Then she shook her head slowly. No, I'm not. Melvin felt something shift inside him. He didn't know her, didn't know her story, but he didn't need to. Her brokenness was written all over her face, and he understood it, because he was just as broken. Without asking further questions, he sat down beside her. There was silence between them, but it wasn't awkward. It was the silence of two souls carrying the same weight. Finally, Betta asked softly, "Why are you here?" Melvin gave a sad smile. "To propose." Her eyes widened. "Propose?" "Yes," he said, looking down at his hands. "I was supposed to ask my girlfriend to marry me tonight. My friends are over there, waiting with champagne. I bought the ring, planned everything." He paused, his jaw tightening. "But she's not coming. She's in Paris with someone else." Betta's lips parted, but no words came. She understood the sharpness of betrayal, the sting of being replaced. Her own pain rushed back, and fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. Melvin watched her for a moment. She was so fragile, so delicate in that moment, yet so breathtaking. Her tears didn't hide her beauty. They only made her look more real, more human. Something inside him whispered that this meeting wasn't an accident. Before he could stop himself, he reached into his pocket, pulled out the small velvet box, and opened it. The diamond sparkled under the garden lights. Betta gasped. "What are you doing?" Melvin turned to her, his eyes steady, his voice firm despite the storm in his heart. "I don't know why, but I feel like I was meant to meet you tonight. Maybe you're the reason she left me. Maybe I'm the reason he left you. Whatever it is, I don't want to think too much. All I know is I don't want to waste this moment." And then, right there in the quiet garden, Melvin went down on one knee. Betta's breath caught in her throat. She had dreamed of proposals, of rings, of forever. But never like this. Not from a stranger, not in the middle of her heartbreak. "Will you marry me?" Melvin asked, his voice steady, his eyes locked onto hers. Betta's mind spun. This was crazy, unbelievably crazy. She barely knew him. She didn't even know his name. And yet, something about the way he looked at her made her believe he was serious. He wasn't joking. He wasn't playing with her heart. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest. She wanted to say no, to run, to escape this madness. But instead, as if her body moved on its own, she stretched out her trembling hand. "Yes," she whispered. Melvin slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands gentle but sure. When it fit perfectly, he smiled for the first time that night. He stood, pulled her to her feet, and whispered, "You're mine now." Still in shock, Betta followed him as he led her back toward the corner of the garden. His friends, who had been waiting anxiously, lit up when they saw him return. Melvin raised their joined hands proudly. "Everyone, meet my fiancé." The men cheered, laughter and clapping filling the air, and champagne bottles popped, glasses were raised, and in an instant, the celebration went on as if it had been planned all along. Betta stood there dazed as strangers hugged her and congratulated her. She glanced at Melvin, who kept smiling at her as if she was the only woman in the world. Later, as they sat among his friends, both Melvin and Beta shared their stories, the betrayals, the pain, the tears. And for the first time that night, Beta felt a strange sense of comfort. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of her story. Maybe it was the beginning.
The champagne flowed and laughter filled the garden. Melvin's friends clapped him on the back, congratulating him for what they thought was a bold and romantic proposal. None of them knew the full story yet, but they could see the glow in his eyes, the way he held Beta's hand as if he never wanted to let go. Beta, on the other hand, was still in shock. The diamond ring sparkled on her finger, and each time she glanced at it, her heart skipped. How did this happen? She asked herself over and over. Just a few hours ago, she had been crying in the arms of Heartbreak. Now she was being introduced as the fiancé of a man she barely knew. When the noise settled, Melvin gently raised his hand to quiet his friends. "Tonight didn't go the way I planned," he said honestly. "But sometimes life has its own plans. I thought I was going to propose to the woman I loved. Instead, I found the woman who deserves my love." The group erupted in cheers again. Beta felt her cheeks burn, but inside, her heart softened a little. His words didn't feel rehearsed. They felt real, raw, and meant for her. As the celebration went on, Melvin and Beta found a quiet moment together. Sitting at the edge of the garden, away from the noise, they finally had a chance to talk. "I don't understand," Beta admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why me? You don't even know me." Melvin looked at her, his expression calm but firm. "Because I saw your pain. I saw your heart, and I know what it feels like. Maybe we were meant to meet tonight, so we could help each other heal." Beta blinked back tears. For the first time in hours, she didn't feel alone. After the party, Melvin surprised her again. "Come with me," he said, taking her hand. He led her to the dock where a sleek boat waited. His friends followed too, still buzzing with excitement, carrying drinks and music. The night air was cool, the moonlight reflecting on the water, and the boat cruise began. As the boat moved gently over the waves, Beta stood at the deck, the wind brushing against her hair. She closed her eyes, letting the cool breeze dry her tears. For the first time since her heartbreak, she smiled. Melvin walked up beside her. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" he said. She nodded. "Yes, it feels freeing." Music played softly in the background as his friends laughed and danced, but for Beta and Melvin, the world seemed to shrink down to just the two of them. They talked for hours. Beta told him about her 6 years of love and betrayal, how she had given everything only to be left behind. Melvin shared his own heartbreak, how Sandra had never truly valued him despite his devotion. The more they talked, the more they realized how much they had in common. 2 different lives, but the same wound. And as the boat glided under the starlit sky, something beautiful began to bloom between them. At one point, Melvin reached for her hand. "Beta," he said softly, "I don't know what tomorrow holds, but tonight I want you to know you're safe with me." Her heart fluttered. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them. Steady, sincere, like a promise. They laughed together, they danced a little, and they forgot the pain that had brought them there. It felt like life was giving them a second chance, a chance neither of them expected. By the end of the cruise, Beta felt lighter. She hadn't smiled this much in months. She looked at Melvin and thought, maybe love isn't about how long you've known someone. Maybe it's about finding the one who chooses you, even when you're broken. As the boat docked and the night came to a close, Melvin held her close. Neither of them wanted the night to end. And as they walked back hand in hand, Beta realized she wasn't just holding on to Melvin, she was holding on to hope again.
The next morning, Betta woke up in Melvin's home. The events of the night before still felt like a dream. The tears, the proposal, the boat cruise. She stared at the ring on her finger, its sparkle catching the sunlight streaming through the window. A part of her still wondered if she had made the right choice, but another part of her felt peace she hadn't known in years. Melvin knocked softly on the door before stepping in with breakfast on a tray. "Good morning, fiancé," he said with a teasing smile. Betta blushed, shaking her head. "You're unbelievable." They both laughed, and for a moment it felt as if they had known each other forever. Over breakfast, Melvin suggested something bold. "Why don't we take a break from the world? Just 1 week. No stress, no business, no exes. Just us." Betta hesitated. She had work, responsibilities, routines, but deep down, her heart was tired of pain, of pretending to be okay. She wanted to breathe again. So she picked up her phone, called her office, and asked for a week off. To her surprise, she felt no guilt. Melvin did the same, informing his staff that he would be less present for a few days. Then, with everything set, they began their escape. That week was like a dream. They visited the beach, walking barefoot along the shore as waves lapped at their feet. They went shopping together, laughing as they tried on silly outfits. They cooked meals side by side in the kitchen, flour on their faces, dancing to music in between stirring pots. Every day Melvin found new ways to make her laugh. Every night, Betta found new reasons to believe again. For the first time in years, she felt seen. Melvin didn't compare her to anyone, didn't make her feel like she had to prove her worth. He cherished her just as she was, broken pieces and all. And for Melvin, Betta was like a fresh breath of life. She didn't care about his money or his status. She listened, she cared, and she brought warmth back into his cold, lonely routines. By the end of the week, both of them knew this wasn't just a temporary escape. This was something real. But reality has a way of knocking back in. One evening, just as they returned from a quiet dinner, Melvin's phone buzzed. It was Sandra. She was back from Paris. Betta saw the name flash across the screen. Her stomach tightened. But Melvin simply silenced the phone and placed it face down. "I don't need to answer that," he said firmly. The very next day, Sandra showed up at his office, expecting to find him waiting for her as always. Instead, she found out from his staff that he had moved on, publicly, proudly. Word had already spread about his proposal in the garden, about the new woman in his life. Sandra's face burned with humiliation. Meanwhile, Betta's ex also reached out, suddenly realizing what he had lost. But Betta didn't even bother to reply. She had given him 6 years, and he had thrown it away without hesitation. This time, she chose herself. She chose love that valued her. She chose Melvin. As the week drew to a close, Melvin and Betta sat together on the balcony of his home, watching the sunset. His arm was wrapped around her shoulders. Her head rested on his chest. "Betta," he whispered, "I don't know how fate works, but I know one thing. Losing her was painful, but finding you makes me grateful. You're the one I want to build my future with." Betta's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of joy. "And I don't regret saying yes, not for 1 second." They kissed softly, the kind of kiss that sealed promises without words. Two broken hearts had found each other in the ashes of betrayal. What began as tears in a garden had blossomed into love, unexpected, unplanned, but stronger than anything they had known before. And as the night wrapped around them, Betta knew her story wasn't ending. It was just beginning.
Thank you for staying tuned. Now, what would you do if you find yourself in Betta's situation? Would you accept proposal from a stranger? Or will you propose to a stranger if you were Melvin? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Also, subscribe to the channel to have more stories coming your way.